Alex Haley. Some time ago, I had the opportunity to speak at Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green. And while I was there, I also had the opportunity to be taken up to see the university's museum. And I was just captivated. There were individual items, and certainly the collection of all the items just really spoke to me about what we like to call living history. Those things which symbolize the past, which symbolize the world of our forefathers who produced us, and the things that I think we should treasure and pay homage to because they tell us where we came from, which is one of the most important things any people ever can know, is where they came from. And there's nothing better to remind us of that than these heirlooms and artifacts from history which are in such museums as I saw there that day at Western Kentucky University. Today, I invite you to take a video tour of the Kentucky Museum, to see its exhibits, to get a feel for the wealth of history, for the wealth of cultural understanding offered to Kentucky's citizens, especially to Kentucky's children. And at the conclusion of this tour, Western Kentucky University will present a plan to help provide additional exhibit and classroom space for the Kentucky Museum. I hope you'll agree with me that Western's plan is both forward-looking and economical, and that it represents a sound educational investment for generations to come.
A long time ago, this fire wagon would not be able to put out much of a fire, would it? Aren't we lucky today?
I'm Tom Meredith, and I've just been visiting the Kentucky Museum here on the campus of Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green. And behind me is one of our outstanding exhibits, a magnificent log cabin built in 1805 by Archibald and Mary Weldon Phelps of Logan County. For over 160 years, through 7 generations, first Archibald and Mary, then their descendants, lived, worked, laughed, cried, had children, and then saw those children off into the world, all within these log walls. Now the Phelps House is one of the major exhibits here at the Kentucky Museum, donated in 1978 by the Honorable and Mrs. Sam Houston Watkins. The Phelps House, like many things in museums, is a message from our past, a message about who we were as a people and a means by which we can better understand what we have become. That's one of the great values of museums to society, to help us encounter the treasures of our history and better understand our present lives in light of that encounter.
Jeff, no. I couldn't get up there if I tried. No, this, you need to read this right here. We're not a kitty bicycle about that. How would you like to get on that and ride that bicycle, Sarah? Look, you have a good bicycle. All the way to get up to there. It'd be difficult, wouldn't it? I like your bicycle today, is it, huh? I wouldn't ride on that. Does it have all those speeds and things, 10 speeds? Wouldn't it fall over? Tell me about it. How do they get up on that? Right there.
For Kentuckians, the Kentucky Museum offers a unique and most important opportunity for just this type of social and historical encounter. Because here, as in the finest institutions across the country, the Kentucky Museum offers its visitors a vast range of objects, books, and manuscripts, all interrelated within the museum's exhibits.
Here we go, girls. We'll do one more and we have to go on, honey.
These objects around me, for instance, are part of Growing Up Victorian, a national prize-winning exhibit that has been viewed by thousands of museum goers. This exhibit, like many here, serves as a fine example of the way the museum uses books and manuscripts and artifacts to provide the people of Kentucky with a special encounter with their past. Growing Up Victorian is centered upon the experience of a young Bowling Green woman, Josephine Calvert. From 1878 to 1881, Josephine kept a diary for her father, who was in Texas during those years on business. Josephine wrote of the comings and goings of people in her family's life, who was in town, what the preacher said in church, what people wore, how rooms were furnished, stories and details that would help bring her father up to date when he returned. Josephine Calvert was a good writer with a keen sense of character and setting. Drawing upon the details provided by her diary and other books and manuscripts, Kentucky Museum curators and staff were able to create the exhibit you see here. This is no mere display of objects. Instead, the combination of diary entries and letters, room furnishings, artifacts, and lighting draw the visitor back a full century to Victorian Kentucky, to scenes that Josephine Calvert herself might instantly recognize. The museum goer encounters the past fleshed out from the experience of a single young life. Some 27,000 Kentucky school children per year tour this and other exhibits at the Kentucky Museum. In exhibits like Growing Up Victorian, these children are given the opportunity to understand a bit more about their special history, a bit more about what makes Kentucky such a unique place. And there is more. On the second floor of the Kentucky Museum, here in the Kentucky Library, one can find the very documents from which Growing Up Victorian was mounted. On the table in front of me, for example, are letters from the Calvert family, maps of Bowling Green from the late 19th century, and this slim volume, the diary of Josephine Calvert. For me, the public availability of these books and documents and their relationship to the artifacts on exhibit here is the most important aspect of the Kentucky Museum. The ability of the Kentucky Museum to mount great exhibits and to provide research materials for the people of Kentucky is absolutely first-rate. There are books, manuscripts, and artifacts here to support dozens of exhibits like Growing Up Victorian. The curators and staff who can create exhibits and manage materials are among the best in the nation. And yet, the potential of the Kentucky Museum is not being fully tapped. To put it simply, the Kentucky Museum has run out of space. Space for exhibits and space for its books and manuscripts collections. And here is the result. This room contains treasures, artifacts of historical, political, and social importance to the people of Kentucky. Here is a collection of firearms going back to Kentucky's earliest days. In these boxes are dozens of dolls dating from the 1840s to the 1970s. And here are furniture pieces from 1720 to the 1950s. This is one of my favorite things, a big bass drum used here in Bowling Green to drum up support for political rallies and town meetings. It was last used by Lucian Hayes, grandson of its maker, to celebrate the end of World War I. He was so excited about the victory that he beat this drum from late afternoon until midnight to celebrate Armistice Day. For me, the voice of this great drum symbolizes the ability of the Kentucky Museum to take an artifact of Kentucky history and bring the voice of that artifact to life. But too many of the treasures contained in this museum are stored away, unseen or underutilized. They remain here, awaiting adequate display space. In the remainder of this brief program, Western Kentucky University will present its plans for construction at the Kentucky Museum, construction that will vastly increase the museum's ability to make these treasures of history more accessible to the people of Kentucky. I hope you will agree with me that Western's plan is both intelligent and economical, a plan that will bring more of Kentucky's history to life.
The Kentucky Museum today occupies the first and third floors of the Kentucky Building. The second floor of the Kentucky Building houses the Kentucky Library, manuscripts, and Folklife Archives. The immediate problem faced by the Kentucky Museum is finding new space for the proper storage, classification, and display of the books and other research materials contained in the Kentucky Library, manuscripts, and Folklife Archives. If new space can be provided, the second floor of the Kentucky Building would then become available for new exhibits of materials now in storage at the Kentucky Museum. Literally thousands of items are presently displayed, shelved, or in storage on the second floor of the Kentucky building. There are newspapers dating back to the 19th century, letters from soldiers in the Revolutionary War, almost 2,000 maps, Kentucky House and Senate journals, genealogy records, scrapbooks, family Bibles, sheet music, even a very early collection of American paper dolls. In the Folklife Archives, the visitor can learn about Kentucky life and customs through the years, what songs were sung, how to tell when spring is coming, what things a bride needs for good luck, even how to play marbles. Thousands of students and other museum visitors use these research materials every year. And as the Kentucky Library, Manuscripts, and Folklife Archives pursue their educational mission, their collections grow, resulting in an increased demand for storage, classification, and display with each passing year. The Kentucky Museum's collections of objects and artifacts are also growing rapidly. Recent acquisitions include the Julius Rather collection of items from Kentucky political life, the Courtney Ellis collection of 19th century photographs, maps, and objects dealing with life on the Green River, the J. Proctor Knott collection of furniture, letters, and art, and the Tim Lee Carter collection of political memorabilia. A very unusual acquisition is the William H. McLean collection of toy soldiers, dating from 1920 to about 1940. These collections represent just a few of the artifacts and objects that could be professionally displayed and enjoyed by thousands of adults and children if exhibit space could be made available. To solve the Kentucky Museum's space problem, Western Kentucky University proposes to build a 55,000 square foot addition on the northwest side of the Kentucky building. Comprised of environmentally controlled collections maintenance rooms, classrooms, and reading rooms on 4 floors, this addition will be the new home of the Kentucky Library, Manuscripts, and the Folklife Archives. Of the 55,000 total square feet planned in the new building, 40,000 square feet will be reserved for the conservation, cataloging, shelving, and display of books, manuscripts, photographs, and other research items presently housed on the second floor of the Kentucky building. When these collections are moved to the proposed addition, approximately 7,000 square feet on the second floor of the Kentucky building will then be available for use as exhibition space. Several innovations are planned for the new addition, providing state-of-the-art teaching and research tools accessible to every visitor, from the seasoned scholar to the youngest schoolchild. And visitors of all ages will be able to explore the Kentucky Museum's exhibits in depth with the aid of computer-based interactive multimedia. With these optical disc-driven units, visitors can explore the museum's exhibits at any depth they desire, bringing up documents, photographs, and other materials prepared by the Kentucky Museum's expert curators and scholars. Just as important, multimedia materials prepared for viewing at the Kentucky Museum can be distributed to museums and schools across the nation, extending the resources of the Kentucky Museum far beyond the borders of the Commonwealth.
Western Kentucky University's founder, Henry Hardin Cherry, dreamt of teaching the young people of Kentucky about their heritage through object lessons. The original Kentucky building of 1939 was a fulfillment of that dream, and it was paid for, in large part, by the children of Kentucky themselves, saving their pennies and nickels in banks like this one. The donations of those Kentucky children to the 1939 Kentucky Building Fund were investments that profited them, their children, and now their grandchildren. Today, we have the opportunity to invest once again for the benefit of the children of Kentucky, to help provide the means by which they and their descendants may understand the treasures of their heritage. This is where Western Kentucky University plans to build its new addition to the Kentucky building. And it's exciting to stand here and imagine the possibilities from this new construction, to imagine how future generations of Kentuckians will profit from it.